Celine, I want to bring you in here because you told me about this thing you do, the Someone Like Me series, and this concept of guiding nodes. And it sort of, this made me think of that it's this more lightweight sort of, it's not a huge, big program thing, but something that people can learn from others in the organization. Do you want to share a bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. We actually just had that last week. So you have really good timing on bringing it up. And I'll bring everyone up to speed real quick. So we have our orientation, our week-long orientation, which is now virtual, completely virtual, is called ExSchool. And we have various sessions throughout each of the days. And on the final day, we added a new session that I facilitated, which was called Becoming an Elastician. And it was an AMA with what we called guiding nodes. And they were elasticians who have been at Elastic for anywhere from 1 to 3 years. And they basically just talked about their experience and what has helped them become successful elasticians. And there was an AMA sheet that the ex-schoolers got to fill out and ask whatever questions they wanted. And we kind of just facilitated answering those questions in a live panel with all of those guiding nodes. And I think it was a really cool experience because not only were the ex-schoolers super excited to be able to talk to elasticians who have kind of been there, done that, and are really experiencing what they're about to experience, but it was also something that, this kind of surprised me a little bit, was so appreciated by the guiding nodes themselves, and they were so happy and excited to share. And it was just so cool to see them light up when they got to talk about something that they had learned. So it was a really win-win on both sides. And I think that to Andy's point, that was definitely them reflecting on some of the things that they've learned. So it was a learning experience for them as well.
And how much easier is it to learn from your peer or someone who's like just one step ahead of you, right? That's a very cool thing. So how did you guys set that up? Like, how formal is it? How often do you run it?
Yeah, so we just started it. So this was our first one. We'll definitely keep doing it because we got some really good feedback. But how we did, and actually I didn't bring that in, so thank you for asking. How we set it up was these individuals, I wanted to think of a way to choose them strategically in a way that also motivates people to keep sharing their story. So our talent brand team has this series called Someone Like Me, and it's basically blogs that have people at Elastic sharing their story and sharing how they've used their own uniqueness as an advantage at Elastic. So one of the speakers, for example, has an accent, and she, I think I called her blog Excelling with an Accent. And she kind of wrote about how she's used her culture and her communication to help her connect with people as being someone with an accent. And so we chose people who've written Someone Like Me blogs. And actually at the end of the AMA that we just had for ExSchool, I did encourage the ex-schoolers, you've seen this now. We would love for some of you to become guiding nodes for the next ExSchool. And how they can do that is by writing a Someone Like Me blog. And then from there, we can choose the people for the next round.
Yeah. Celine, I'm sorry, Andrew.
No, go for it.
The Someone Like Me blog, is that an internal only thing, or do you share that out on like the elastic.com website or
yeah,
LinkedIn?
It's on our website.
Or it's on your website. Okay.
Yeah, so let me get the link and I can show you.
Yeah, I'd love to. At the old company I worked for, NCR, we had something like that where we were trying to get employees to blog about their experience at NCR, and it kind of fell flat after the first couple months. We were doing really well. We had, our main trendsetters, or whatever you call influencers, right? Who were totally all about, I'll go that extra mile and write a 300 word, blah, blah, blah. But then after like the first couple months of like, we got those people, it went like, it was like pulling teeth to try to get people to like write something, and always the same excuse. Is just what we're dealing with right now. I don't have time. I don't have time for that. So I'm just wondering, like, have you been doing this for a long time? Is it continued on successfully? If so, how did you continue to get people to do it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think part of that was the cross-functional involvement that was involved that made it a little easier. The talent brand team has had this blog series for a while. So there are still several folks who have already written blogs that we could kind of pull on if we don't get anyone new, but I'm hoping we do get at least 1 or 2 new people from the most recent ExSchool. And I think that, man, how do you get people to continue doing it? I think that some of it is seizing opportunity, and some of it is kind of continuing to build the same culture. We were pretty, and I would say the talent brand team gets credit for this, is pretty strategic about when there is something exciting that people would be able, or would kind of motivate them. I mean, there's been a lot that's happened this year, for example. And so that has been a huge motivator in being like, hey, like for these reasons, we encourage you to share your story, and kind of having a forum to link people if they want to share a Someone Like Me blog. I don't know if there's, I'm curious to hear what everyone else thinks, because I don't know that there's one right answer to that.
I have more of a, I guess, a question or comment. I mean, if you think about it, do people post on Twitter? People post on Instagram? People post on Facebook? Right? They keep posting.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask this question. Why do you think they keep posting on Facebook, Twitter?
Likes. Everybody posts so they can get likes.
Attention. Yeah. Like...
We all want that dopamine thing that says somebody liked you, right? That I hate to say it. I hate to boil it down to so simplicity, but that's what it is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, but then why do you think they're not posting it on doing blogs and things like that?
Because they don't get likes, right? So they do all this work, and then it's like, for what? So it almost makes me think, when Celine was saying, I would love to hear what other ideas we have. I looked back over here where Andrew said extrinsic things are gamification and rewards. If I give somebody a free meal at their favorite restaurant every time they write a blog, I bet I'd get 50 blogs tomorrow, you know? But am I then like motivating them the wrong way? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I forcing them to write something? I don't know.
I'm going to give you an example. I don't know if you ever read Daniel Pink's Drive. Have you anybody read that? So there's the scenario, he opens the book up. I don't know if you guys, so imagine it's 1995, right? There's 2 encyclopedias out there. There's one that's backed by a huge company and they pay millions of dollars for experts. And then there's one that starts a few years later that's people just go in their own free time and start creating content. Now, if you ask anybody traditionally which one would have succeeded, people would have backed the company. What I'm talking about is Microsoft and Carta. The other ones we're talking about is Wikipedia. And yet people are still contributing to Wikipedia. So, and the whole book is all about intrinsic motivation and what's sustainable, right? So I just want to share that as an example where extrinsic motivation didn't work. It didn't work in that example, and traditionally it maybe works in the short term, but not in the long term. Yeah. So how do you enable autonomy, mastery, and purpose?
Yeah, I think that's
you're
super
so right. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm gonna welcome Marsha in a second.
Yeah, let's welcome Marsha.
But let's just wrap up this thought, because it's actually perfect timing. Marsha's gonna have a lot to contribute to the second topic as well. Yeah, Alec, finish your thought there, because you were.
Oh, I mean, Andy, you're so right. You just nailed me. I use the Google Crowdsourcing app all the time. All it is me helping their machine learning. And what do they give me? Points that don't mean anything. Nothing. I don't do it for the points or the level of Google. I do it because I enjoy participating in something that I think creates a greater good. So when I help it understand what pictures are people and what pictures are sheep, I know that 10 years from now, when I take a picture of a sheep, it's going to really say that's not a person. I don't know. But I personally enjoy that. But how do I find that personal enjoyment for everybody else? Like, man, I really want to read this book now. Yeah, everybody's different.
I think the problem is we try as companies, we try to force things. Like, we have an agenda, right? Like there's always something there. I think if we were more about, again, being human-centric, I think we would do a better job and understand human nature. I think we'd be better off in designing programs that meet people and really understanding all the different groups and working with them. So that's why I love the idea of crowdsourcing, for example, and having people share their own ideas, right? And having ownership there. So again, I think those are some examples, but I know.
I love all these points, because you guys are touching on this thing you may have seen that I've been writing about recently quite a bit, is this flywheel where people learn from each other. We've talked about that, this peer-to-peer learning. And then you get experts, and Celine, you guys are doing this amazing job at identifying who those experts are. And then the final one is teachers, and teachers are experts who get joy out of sharing their knowledge, right? Like, for whatever that is. And that's the intrinsic stuff we've been talking about. Like, Alec, that feel like you're contributing to this greater good. And I wonder, like, Yeah, I'm familiar with KPMG, and maybe it's the same at PwC. I think Alec and Celine, you guys come from pretty different type companies, and it's like, how do you get those people where they actually see value in their time helping others, like that they are contributing to a greater good? And Marsha, feel free to jump in as well if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, so I did some research on the role of an online facilitator in my dissertation.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that the role of the facilitator has to flip. They have to see it as flipped. So they become this guide and coach instead of this know-it-all empress person that has all infinite knowledge. And I tried this in my online classes and it works. If I allow the control to be not from the instructor, but from the students, I get so much richer dialogue and discussion than if I led the discussion. So I let them start it off and get the ball rolling, and I only guide them. So it's like bumpers on the bowling alley. It's a kind of like I steer them in this direction, but I don't give them those insights that they come to. And it's so much more of a richer online experience than it is if it's guided by somebody who's a facilitator, that my role is to regurgitate knowledge and get you to act on these principles.
Yeah.
That's a very different role and aspect than what we're used to in academia and in corporate.
Yeah. So, and that's like
Yes.
that's what Andy's saying, like about the agenda, right? Coming with this agenda. So was that a leap for you, Marsha? And but once we're done with this, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself and all that.
Oh yeah, sure. You know what? It wasn't a leap because I did a lot of research on it, and Moore has a lot of stuff on this about the 3 levels of interaction that's required in any kind of online, environment. You got to have peer-to-peer, peer to instructor, and instructor to the class or the peers. If any one of those are weak, then you have no, you will see participation slide off and people's interest will dissipate. I don't think it's hard. I think it's hard sometimes when instructors who have not created their own content, who's probably regurgitating, who's not really versed in some of the content in certain areas to do that, because then they're not seen as an expert or a guide on the side. But if you know your craft, you're willing to let go of that control so you can get that epiphany. That's just my perspective.
That's such a good point. Anybody else have a thought on that?
I just wanted to ask, Marsha, did you say it was the Moore program or something like that?
Or Moore is a theorist. It's called constructivism. And it's kind of around learner-centered. What we're trying to do at Ford was like learner-centric content and curriculum and all driving from a learner's perspective.